everyone, so a very warm welcome back to the channel, where today I'm now going to show you how to complete the before start items here. Alongside that, we'll do a pushback, start the engines up, we'll do a taxi and take off and climb out tutorial as well. So at this moment in time, we've now completed boarding. As you can see there, GSX is now going off and doing its thing. So to go ahead and now complete some of the before start items, one of the things I've already gone ahead and done is I've already gone ahead and turned on my beacon light, now considering that GSX is getting onto the airplane. But just complete some of the overhead items to start with. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my fuel pumps here. Something else I'm also going to do as well is I'm going to turn on my electrical hydraulical pump here. Hydraulic pump even. Reason that I'm doing that is that even though when it comes to the parking brake, and this here is the indicator that shows clearly at the moment we do have good pressure, if you take the brakes on and off, which can sometimes happen, it can actually bleed pressure that might already be in the system without the hydraulic pump on. So I highly recommend in this case you turn the hydraulic pump on, so that way it can provide continuous pressure. Like I say, also just consider as well that not every brake system on every airplane is hydraulically driven now, but in this case it is, so that's why I've gone ahead and turned it on. Yet again, like I say, I've also turned my beacon lights on as well, because we are going to shortly push back. I've also considered my seat belts and no smoking signs as well, because we had finished refueling prior to that, but if you're refueling during boarding, that's something you do need to consider. But basically, yeah, you want to make sure that those are on. Also as well, I've already gone ahead and disconnected our GPU and everything like that, but at this stage what I'd do is I'd come over here like so, to our ground equipment page, and basically what you want to do is you want to close any doors. You can also arm the doors as well, which I highly recommend you do. So in this case, I don't know, let's open up door 2 left, because that's where we're boarding from. Or if there's any like cargo doors open, what you want to go ahead and do is you want to go ahead and close it like so. And then once ready, you want to go ahead and arm the doors there, like so. I also go ahead and check on my door page here that all the doors are armed as well, which they are, which is great. You can also remove the chocks as well, but beforehand you want to make sure that your brakes are pressurised, as I've just said, so that way obviously you currently arm the brakes, because if you don't have any braking source, then like I say, you could end up somewhere where you shouldn't do. Also, you want to remove your GPU as well. You want to make sure that your APU is started up, which I showed you in the last video how to do as well. But you've also got, just in case you haven't done that, you've got your APU master switch here that basically you want to push, and then a few months later you'll be able to start and then put the APU bleed on, because we do start up the engines like that. And basically you just want to remove any external items like so. Another thing you want to do as well is go over to your transponder here, make sure that you have got the right information set on it. In this case we're not online, so I've just put 2000 in, but if you're somewhere like at Kennedy, you want to have your transponder on prior to pushback, so you want to go ahead and turn that on. And one of the final things I'll also do here as well is you want to lock the door. So close it, and then lock it. There we go, like so. Just also be considerate as well that not all these items are actually on a checklist necessarily. So yeah, some of them you will have to do as memory items. But now, before we push back, I'm now going to complete my before start items. So parking brake, that is now set. Takeoff speeds and thrust, they're also set as well. Windows are closed and the beacon lights are on. So we're now ready for the pushback. So brakes release, here we go. Okay, so I'm now going to show you the engine startup procedure. I should also point out as well that I have had a problem with GSX, which means that it is going to slightly break the airplane, okay? So I'm going to do things slightly differently on this tutorial, just in case you should have this issue, because I'm going to explain how to fix those. Because in case you don't fix it, the airplane is going to be pretty much untaxable, if that's even a word. Untaxiable, I should say. You're not going to be able to taxi on it. But yeah, I'll show you how to now start the engine. So basically, you want to make sure you've now got an air source. In this case, we're on the APU. Of course, you can use the ASU for a non-stand start if needs be. But what we're now going to do is we're going to come here to the engine mode selector. We're going to go IGN start. I'm going to flick number 3, engine master up, and number 4. Start sequence of this airplane is 3 and 4 together, then 2 and 1. Okay, so in this case, what we're looking for is the starter valve open, which it has done. We're looking to see that our N2's coming up. And then the M1 should start to come up momentarily, like so. And these are Saitek control engines, so we don't manually have to input the fuel. The computer will decide that for us. Should be any moment. It happens around about 20% N2, just above that. So roughly about now. So there we go. We've got fuel flow indications. So in which case, we want to make sure that EGT starts coming up. N2 continues to come up. Same with the M1. We want Want to make sure that oil quantity is going down, as explained earlier, because that oil in the reservoir is now going in the engine to keep it cool. And we also want to make sure that the pressure is going up as well, which it is, which is great. It's also normal as well to have a little bit of vibration as well, so we're also looking for that as well. That's what we want to do. We want to just continuous monitoring start. Then roughly above 20% N1, we should get an available light saying that basically the engine's ready to go. Okay, great. And the starter valves have closed. That's a good start on engines 3 and 4. So we're now ready to go on engines 2 and 1. So basically we're just completing the same step. So we'll now go ahead and set the parking brake. So normally I don't like to do this early, but I would like to just demonstrate this problem that I am actually having with GSX. So I will tell them that we have had a good start. And in just a few moments, I expect I'm going to get a warning saying that we've got a problem with our wheels. Okay? In which case, I'm going to show you how to fix that. So normally, like I say, I wouldn't tell GSX to start disconnecting. Now I'm going to start till all engines have actually started successfully. Okay, so that's a good start on number 2. That's a good start on number 1. Okay, so for whatever reason, the message hasn't actually popped up. I am still playing around with my 2024 settings, but just in case you should encounter an issue where the airplane isn't actually turning in the way that it should, and this is something that I'm always going to do now whenever, if I have to like reset GSX before pushback. And basically what I'm going to do is I want to make sure that I've still got my APU running, which I have done here. I'm actually going to go ahead and shut down all the engines. Okay, reason being is I want to come over here to my maintenance page and I'm going to hit reset brake temps and reset tyres. Okay, because it does cause a problem with the tyres, but for whatever reason it doesn't actually then come up on the wheel page for whatever reason. So now that I've gone ahead and done that, what I'm actually going to go ahead and do is I'm going to restart the engines as shown, and then we can carry on with the after start items. Okay, so that's a good start on all engines here. So for the after start items, we want to put the engine mode selector over to normal. Whilst I'm down here, I'm going to arm my speed brakes there. I'm also going to take off my hydraulic electrical pump there, like so. And basically starting from the overhead, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my APU master, turn off my APU bleed. Also, whilst I'm up here as well, I like to go ahead and set my lights ready for the taxi. So in this case, nose lights, go over to taxi, and we'll turn off the runway turn off lights as well. Also making sure that my pack fault lights and the generator fault lights have gone out as well. Also like to just do another check on the batteries, making sure that we have enough volts in them and that the system is currently charging those up, which they are, which is great, because like I say, we don't want to go below 25.5. So super. So something else I'm also going to do as well. Most people don't actually do this, but I like to do this, and I just like to put all my flaps out fully, just make sure there's nothing wrong with them. Of course, if there was anything wrong with them, this is a fly-by-wire airplane, we would actually get a message up saying something like, I don't know, slap free lock, for instance, okay? But still, even on an Airbus, I like to just go ahead and do that, make sure they're fully working, because I don't want to get in the air and find out there is a problem. Whilst they're doing that, I like to go over to max on the auto brakes. Check they've gone over to full. Basically, max here, in case you didn't know, is the RTO option on Airbus. Whilst they're coming back up as well, a few other things I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my PWS on. I'm going to set it for system 1. If you're in the FO seat you're flying, set it over to system 2. Okay. So next thing I'm going to do now is I'm just going to check, make sure all my systems are okay. Looking for any abnormalities here. So see here, temperature on the oil is absolutely fine. You do want to make sure that's gone up during start as well. Got good pressure, good quantity. That's all fine. Just also checking as well that my bleeds look good, which they do. Pressurization, don't really need to check that, but for me I just do it as a sort of flow, going from left to right, so on and so on. And also checking my generators as well, so they're currently online and we've got a good load on them each. That's fantastic. With all four running, you do want to make sure that, you know, there isn't quite a massive load on just one of them. Okay, so all around, that's quite a good load on all of them, so that's fine. We've already just checked that. I'll skip over that. I'll go over to the hydraulics. So, green, blue, and yellow systems all up and running. We've got good pressure in all of them, which is great. APU, so in this case, because we've turned off the APU, that's now come over to off. Be aware that there is a cooldown cycle period for that. So even as soon as hit off, it won't immediately go off. I think what happens is it needs about 20-30 seconds. Then it'll start turning off. But I think it remains at 70% for a little bit, because that enables a cooldown period, but the EGT does drop off. But basically, yeah, the APU won't turn off straight away. It has to go through a cooldown period. Also checking my air conditioning here. That looks quite good. I'm happy on 18. All doors are closed. Wheels, they are good. And I'll actually go back to the flight control page. I'm just going to check the fuel, make sure that it's still fine. Also checking the system, so everything's normal. And we'll go back to the flight control page, at which point I am going to check, make sure that everything is set how we need it to be. So for the pitch trim today, we need it set at 4.9 units up, which it is. Something else you can also do as well, and it doesn't actually, I think, come up on my checklist, but that's actually, oh no it is, but that's actually checking the trims. Okay, so basically what LTC taught me is you don't want to do a full deflection when it comes to checking the trims. You basically just want to go like 1 unit up and then 1 unit down, as I'm doing so here. Make sure everything's fine. We're also going to do the same on the rudder trim as well. Make sure everything's okay with that. Reason being is that for whatever reason, if it does break, you don't want it stuck in a massive deflection. Okay, but overall that looks good, so I'm happy with my trims. They're working as needs be. We'll also carry out a flight control check as well. Now, you don't actually have to have the synoptic page up for this, but it is considered good practice. Like I say, just like with the flaps, if there's any issues in this case, because it is a fly-by-wire airplane, you'll likely get an ECAM message saying that, you know, there is a problem with those. But yeah, again, like I say, it is just good practice just to bring those up. It can also give you peace of mind as well that everything is working fine. Just bringing up the speed brakes there, like so. So yep, speed brakes have gone up. I'm happy with that. We'll now retract them, and then we'll now arm them. Fair, I should have probably armed them earlier. But yep, other than that, I'm basically now ready to go. So, we'll just compare out the after start checks, and then we'll get going. Of course, we're not on the network today, so I don't need to ask for taxi clearance, but I would normally go ahead and do that. So, anti-ice, we don't need that, that is off. Obviously, you can set that on if you need to. ECAM status, well, we've just checked that, that's all fine. The pitch trim is set as well, and the rudder trim is neutral, so we're all ready to go. Something else you can also do at this stage as well, it's entirely up to you. For me, I'm going to do it before we get to the runway, and that's basically making sure all your ECAM actions ready for takeoff are set. So basically in this case, signs on, which they are, which we already talked about. Cabin ready. Sometimes you may get a ping from the cabin crew that does say you are ready, or sometimes the person does actually have a button on their control panel, and that'll send this message up through here to our ECAM. You've also got speed brakes armed as well, because you do need to make sure those are armed. And then, like I say, if you don't have them armed, which I'll unarm here like so. In fact, I will show you now actually as it goes. Then obviously it'll say here in blue that you need to go ahead and arm those like so. So it does act as a good reminder. Also, what I showed you earlier when it comes to the flaps on the takeoff page here. So for whatever reason, if we were to set full flaps, then the computer would say, uh-oh, you've got a problem. So basically it also acts as a very nice reminder as well. Basically the only other thing we need to do, and it's quite straightforward, and that's doing a TO config test. But we can do that now. So basically what you want to do here is go to TO config. If it's all green, normal, there's no blue, you're ready to rock and roll. Right, in this case we'll head out for 07 centre here. So parking brakes released, here we go. So considering that the airplane is actually quite light, so you should start to move a little bit as you see that one idle. If not, you want to apply power gently till she gets moving. So I will put a bit of power in. In this case, I have actually enabled my rudders to control the steering. There is an option for that on settings. To disconnect it, simply push in like so. I should point out you will get a little bit of authority on the rudders. In this case, we've got nose wheel steering enabled, and that's doing its job. In case you don't have it enabled, I highly recommend that you do bind some buttons to it, because it is really, really helpful. So, in a straight line, you can go up to 30 knots, but be considerate where you are at. So in this case, because we're going to make a right turn here, I'm not too sure if that is the procedure at Frankfurt, but I'm just going to do a series of turns just to show you how to basically operate the airplane. We're also going up a bit uphill as well, so you can see you might need a bit more power. As you see, ground speed's dropped off there. That's fine. Just want to keep it a bit slow here. In fact, actually, now I'll put a little bit of power on. But yeah, basically, just be considerate that if you've got a really straight piece of taxiway, you could go up to 30 knots, but if you've got a lot of turns, then you don't want to ride the brakes, okay? Seriously, do not ride the brakes in this airplane. And that basically means just be considerate of overusing them, okay? Then, like I say, just be considerate of your speed there. Ever in doubt, there's nothing wrong with going slow or even stopping, okay? Also be considerate of the length of the airliner, okay? She's not as big as some other airplanes, but still, she's a little bit longer than others, so you do have to overshoot curves a little bit and turns. And roughly where I've sort of got the, what I'm looking here is sort of this point here as to where the nose wheel is to get it straight on the yellow line like so. Also in turns as well, you can go up to a maximum of 15 knots. I like to keep it at 10. But yeah, again, just be considerate of your speed. Don't ride the brakes. 30 knots in a straight line, maximum 15 for a turn. Also, just in case you are wondering, I do have a slight problem with my throttle setup at the minute. That's something I do need to fix, because it does vibrate a little bit. So as you can see here, the airspeed is, sorry, the ground speed in this case, either way of speed, getting a little bit high for this turn, because I do want to turn here. Whether that's real life or not, I'm not too sure. But I'm actually going to slow her down just to about 11 knots. I'm going to turn her on to here like so. Also, just in case you do want to turn your AFB off, just come over here to the cog, and then I'm going to hit power off, because I don't actually need it at this time. I'm also going to put a little bit more power in as well, because we are slowing down. But yet again, consider I'm actually going to shortly turn to the right here. I don't want to put too much power in. Like I say, slow is better than going fast. I can actually feel that the airplane isn't fully straight either, and that's something else you can also get a feel of when you start to taxi the airplane as to where the actual back of the airplane is as well. So this is also where I prefer just to slightly overshoot the turn. I find that it's helpful, so that way we don't need too much room to straighten up. I also like to use Bob's wipers here, just in case you don't know. This is First Officer Bob. There's a bit of a reference there for changing the view. I'm also going to open up the power now as well, because we're now on a straight a bit of taxiway. And I'm happy for it to go up to 30 knots. But yet again, you don't want to ride the brakes. It's a little bit tricky in this case to not do so, because we're that heavy. Sorry, because we're not that heavy. So if you are that little bit heavier, instead of using the brakes to slow down, you can just put the power to idle. That'll help you out. Now, because we are quite light today, that might not necessarily work. But as you can see here, the power's now at idle. We're now at a nice 19 knots. I'm happy to stick to that. But the airspeed is slightly increasing, so when we get over to the hold, we're not going to have an option not to use the brakes. But like I say, if you're a bit heavier, you can just use idle power as a good way to slow down. But also, you don't need to go completely max on the brakes either. You can just use gentle inputs, which should be able to help you. Okay everyone, so we're now approaching the hold, but as you can see we are going a little bit fast, so I will need to apply some brakes. Not too much, mind you. We can just go very little braking there. As you see, I'm barely putting any heat into the tyres there at all. And like I say, overshooting ever so slightly. Now, I don't actually want to enter the runway just yet. I also apologise, I am having some slight problem with the scenery, but I've not fully got that set up yet in 2024 to how I need it to do so. I see that it's rendering quite late. I do need to sort that. But still, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put her into position here like so. And we're going to make sure that prior to entering the runway, we are good to go. So, prior to entering the runway, I want to make sure that my strobe lights are on. We're going to turn them on in this case. I'm also going to turn my landing lights on. Set my nose lights to TO. And I also want to make sure that my transponder is on as well. Of course, you also want to ask ATC permission before you go ahead and do any of that. For us, there's no ATC today, so we're not going to worry about that. We're clear on both approach lines, so with that, I'm happy to enter the runway. I'm also checking as well to make sure that all of my ECAM actions are set. We are ready to go. Also confirming that my brake temps are also good as well, because we need under 300 degrees. As well, because otherwise we can't take off. So yeah, my brake temps are absolutely perfect. So with that, we're now ready to go. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to line her up onto the runway. And then we're going to discuss a few items before putting takeoff power in and heading on the way to Hamburg. Okay everyone, so now we are on the centre line of the runway 07 centre. We're nearly ready to go. Now, yet again, just be considerate. Before you enter the runway, it's maybe important to do the checks beforehand. In this case, we're not going to worry about it too much because I actually want to talk to you a few things about before we go. In this case, we're just making sure that the takeoff runway is confirmed, which is correct. We're also making sure that our TCAS is on as well. Packs 1 and 2 are also on as well. We've checked our flight controls, which we've done. Flaps are set in the takeoff configuration, which is 1+F. Radar PWS is on, and the engine mode selector is set as needs be. And that basically, we are takeoff green, we have no blue. In particular, we need to make sure that we don't have TO Inhibit, which comes up here in pink. We definitely don't want that on. But yeah, basically we're making sure we have auto brakes max, which is on. The signs are on. The cabin is ready, the speed brakes are armed, in this case the spoilers, and the flaps are set for the takeoff position and that the TO config is normal. So in this case we are now ready to go. So basically just discuss with you about the procedure for takeoff. So when you're ready to go, basically I call setting takeoff power. What you want to do is you want to set roughly about 50% power, making sure that all the T's and P's come up symmetrically on the engines, at which point you're happy, so in that case stabilise. Call set takeoff power, or in this case set thrust. It's entirely up to you what you want to say, but you should say set thrust. At which point you then set the applicable takeoff power setting. In this case it is flex, and there's a nice D10 for that. Naturally, of course, if you don't want to look at that, you can still keep an eye on your PFD because it will say when it's set. You actually want to make sure that your flex power, in this case 93.3%, is set prior to 80 knots. Once it is set, you call set thrust. Thrust set, my bad. Yeah, again, this is where I like to use slightly different pronunciation so you don't get confused. So I like to call setting takeoff power. Once the power is stabilised, I call stabilise. And then I say setting takeoff power. And then you call out all the necessary things as needs be. And then I like to call power set. Sometimes companies can differentiate that. There is slightly different procedures, but it's entirely up to you how you want to do that. But basically, yeah, you want to make sure your power is set before 80 knots. Also at that point as well, because we also do need to put in some input with our control stick here. And basically what you do up to 80 knots is you want to make sure you put at least about 66 2/3 in, which is roughly about there. Reason being is that nose wheel does have a tendency to come up, so we are preventing that. But by 80 knots you can actually release it. Also something you do need to do as well is you need to make sure that as you're putting corrective inputs in, as you need to do for the wind, you're applying the correct aileron. So let's just say if the wind was coming from the left today, which it will do a little bit, you need to put left rudder in and then a bit of right aileron as well with that forward pressure. But as we come to 80 knots, you can start taking a little bit of that rudder trim out and aileron out, but then you also want to start bringing that control back. Okay, so as you see there with that white cross, that's kind of how and I can actually do it myself, you know, this is kind of how you want to do it. So yeah, basically as you start to come up 80 knots, release that control pressure yet, and start to slowly bring it in more like that. Okay, but yeah, also something you want to do as well is at 100 knots you want to check, make sure both airspeed indicators are aligned. Normally that's within plus or minus 5 knots, I do believe. But yeah, that's normally what you say, 100 knots cross check. At which point you wait until you're at V1, which point hands go off the throttle. Then at VR, now this is very important. You want to rotate roughly about 2 to 3 degrees a second, okay? On the A340, it's actually very easy to tail strike the airplane, okay? So it's very important to be gentle with it, okay? If you have to do it slowly, do it slowly, okay? It's better you do it like that than to do it like that, okay? To avoid a tail strike, okay? At which point, once you get into the air, that's basically it. Okay, you're then airborne. You want to look for 12.5 degrees, okay, at VR, which point airplane will get airborne. And then, like I say, you want to sort of keep her there, okay, until about 1,500 feet, apply climb thrust, and then follow the flight director as needs be. Your flight modes will become active at 50 feet AGL, and just in case you do need it, you can turn on your autopilot at 100 AGL minimum. But after that, obviously, you want to do your normal things like positive climb, gear up, set your lights if you can be, confirm that you've either got a heading or nav mode active as well. And then you want to bring up your flaps in sequence as needs be. But don't worry, I will show you all of that. Right, so with that now being said and done, let's get ready to go. So I'm going to turn on my clock here, set my chrono, make sure that my brakes are released, and we'll get rolling. So I'm going to set roughly about 50% power. Like I say, I'm applying, we don't actually have any wind here, so I'm not applying any corrections. I would do if there was. So we've got 50% there, everything's come up nicely, I'm happy with that. So I'm going to set flex power. So setting flex. So that's man flex 53, also confirming SRS in green, runway's green as well. We do have a bit of crosswind there. So I'm just going to put in some inputs there like so. The power is now set, that's below 80 knots, so that's power set. There is 80 knots now, releasing forward control pressure. Letting her roll like so, waiting for the V1 call to take my hands off the throttle. There's V1, hands go off the throttle. There's rotate, gently bring in that nose back, looking for about 2 to 3 degrees per second. There we go, she's now airborne, looking for 12.5 degrees. That's nav green mode, which is great. There's about 12.5, and that's positive climb. We're going to bring the gear up now, okay? I'm going to keep that angle until we hit about 1,500 feet, and then I'm going to bring it back to climb thrust. Oh, in this case, sorry, 1,800 feet, roughly. So we're out to Frankfurt. I should also point out as well that the A340 is known, in this case A340-300 is known for being quite a underpowered airplane. So the climb performance might not always be the best. So in this case we're approaching that now. We've got now a message saying it's going to climb thrust. There's thrust climbing green, and we've got open climb, which we don't necessarily want. I'm also going to start a turn now off to the left, looking for 20 degrees. And in this case, because we are quite light, we can immediately go with the flaps up. In this case, if we had flaps 2 for takeoff, you get indication of F and S on here as and when to bring those up. In this case, I'm happy to bring them up now. We're also going to start following the flight director as well. In this case, because it's got an open climb, which I don't want it to do, I'm going to top click here like so, go over to climb. So now it's going to go off the information relative on our FMGS. Give me all the information I need for that, and as you can see, we're a little bit nose down here. Follow the flight director, a little bit unusual for the A340, but that's because we're quite light. Yeah, the flat retraction is very, very simple. You'll get notifications here on the speed tape as and when to bring them up, like so. As we're now past 5,000 feet, we'll now go to standard pressure. In this case, we'll press down here, go over to STD. Some airlines may also have an after takeoff checklist. In our case, we don't. But in this case, after takeoff items are relatively quite simple. So you want to make sure our altimeters are over to standard, which they are. Landing gear is up, flaps are up as well. And I'm also going to go ahead and set my lights as well. So the nose gear, that's currently up now in the hold. So with the turn-offs, I believe. So we're now going to put those over to off. So that's the after takeoff checklist now complete. Now, in this case, because we are flying in Europe, there is a speed restriction, 50 below 10. There are lots in, that is the case in lots of other places as well. So we now want to sort of pitch the airplane to where we get 250 knots, and that will give us the best climb rate. Once we've reached 10,000 feet, we also want to put the nose down further to go up to a cruise speed, at which point we'll then climb on that. Particularly on the Airbus A340, it's not known for being the best climbing airplane. It's far underperformed it is. But very simple though in this case, you just want to follow flight director, and you can turn on the autopilot whenever you want. Something else I'm also going to do now as well is I'm going to take my speed brakes out, because we don't need those. So you say there, we're just running about 250 knots now, we just need to pitch up just that little bit more, like so. So, also in this case, if I did want to climb on best rate, I can go open climb there like so. And then that will provide all the information that needs to be. But we're not going to do that today. I'm going to leave it on the climb mode like so. You see there we're doing really well now through 10,000 feet, through the speed restriction, now looking for 313. Obviously on conversion that will convert into Mach. But at this stage this is where we put the nose down. we're really quite high on the power. We don't want to put any more power in. So by doing so, we still want to keep that climb going, but we still want, but at the same time we want to accelerate up to our cruise speed, and at which point we'll climb up to that. It's known as what's known as a cruise climb. But with that being said and done, I'm going to let the autopilot take over now, so I'm going to gauge autopilot 1. If you're FO flying, because it does give you an option on the IniBuilds for that, you can all go ahead and turn on autopilot 2. Okay. Also be considerate as well of any altitude restrictions that you may have. So say for instance, as ATC is now online for the particular area, in this case Lion Radar, I'd only climb to my top height relative to my to the SID, as mentioned on the charts, otherwise instructed by ATC. But other than that, it's very, very much simple now. We're going to let the airspeed go up to 310 knots. And as you can already see, the vertical speed isn't actually too bad, but I've known it to be a lot higher on other airplanes. But as you'll probably see in a minute, once we hit 310 knots, she is going to start climbing a lot slower. Also, a few other things you can do as well. Yet again, this is entirely up to you, and in fact I should have done it through 10,000 feet. I like to subscribe to the FAA rule with that, but not everyone always does, and that's turn off my landing lights as well. Some companies may go ahead and turn that off with the after takeoff items when you do go ahead and do that. I may also do that for the approach items as well, but for me I like to do it at 10,000 feet because I think it's a very good system personally. Also a little bit early as well, but I'm also going to turn my seatbelt signs to off as well. So as you can see here, she is actually performing really well, but like I say, we are going to expect that VS to start dropping in a few moments. Also have here, if we look at our flight plan by zooming out, you see this here. This basically indicates where we're hoping to be level by. We also have one for the top of descent as well, as you see there at Sierra, VOR Sierra Alpha Sierra, which we'll be planning for shortly. But in the meantime, thank you very much for watching. I certainly have enjoyed this tutorial, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks, bye bye.